Is there any other race in the world that compares to the Hawaii Ironman?
There's a lot of great races in our sport. It's a global sport now. But I think the thing about Hawaii is just the mystique and the prestige that it has. It was the race that brought our sport, I guess, to a wider audience and a mainstream audience. And I mean, triathlon is a lot of things now, a lot of different distances and styles of racing, but that was the one race in Hawaii that really piggybacked the sport for probably a decade or two. So it has that aura and that mystique and that prestige, and I think from that standpoint, there is really nothing that compares to it. It's an amazing race to do. It's an amazing experience just to qualify to represent your country at the World Championships, but it's an incredible atmosphere, and really, it was an honour to win once, let alone twice. It's been a huge privilege to be the champion of that race.
Have you ever thought about why it was the Hawaii race that really captured the imagination of the population in general?
Well, it doesn't surprise me because that's the race that captured my imagination. I mean, I remember during the 80s watching the great battles between Dave Scott and Mark Allen on the wide water sports back home in Australia, and then Greg Walsh, a fellow Aussie, won the race in '94. He was the first non-US athlete to win there, and that was massive news back home. And it certainly captured my imagination. I was always interested in multi-sport events, but yeah, that really was the catalyst that launched me into the sport headlong.
All right. You've raced Kona 3 times now, and have you thought about what it was like to get second in your first attempt, and then what did that give you motivation, maybe even more perhaps than a lot of your competitors, looking from that point forward to the 2 times that you won?
Yeah, I mean, I've always sort of prided myself on the fact that I feel I'm a very consistent athlete, and that was one of the things when I set out I wanted to achieve, sort of a level of consistency. I guess from the standpoint of the conditions that we faced, every year was different, like most races. Obviously the course is the same, but the conditions vary a little, and that adds a different, I guess, aspect or dynamic to the race each time, I think. I mean, going into the race the first time, I was the reigning half Ironman World Champion, and just having watched the race for so many years, I had the utmost respect for the course and the competition I was going to face, and I think in some ways that led to the second place finish. I was in awe of the race, and maybe didn't have that confidence that you need to go all the way that first time, but I mean that's part of the learning experience and the learning curve, and I think it's that respect, that healthy respect I have for the race, which then led to me winning it twice as well. So each experience was different. I mean, that first race in '07 where I finished second on debut still is probably my fondest triathlon memory, because I mean, as a bike rider, you want to get to the Tour de France. As a triathlete, you want to get to Kona, and that was my first experience there. The fact I got second was just the cream, really. It was really, it had taken my whole career to get there, and I was finally there. And it was an amazing experience, probably my fondest memory in the sport.
Did you surprise yourself a little bit to see that you were actually capable of being right there with the best and, the premier event of the sport?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I felt I was capable of it, definitely, and as I mentioned, I'd been a world champion at the half Ironman distance and had a very good career at the short course distance, but I'd never raced really over that distance. That's a longer race. So there is that element of doubt. I think it's human nature to have that doubt, and certainly when you've put a race on a pedestal, your whole career and even before I was a triathlete, so you need to overcome those hurdles as well. But I always hoped that I could be competitive there, but you never really know until you actually go and do it. It's one thing to think about it and train for it and plan for it. It's another thing entirely to go there and execute, and I think there is a realisation that I can be competitive at this distance, at this level.
And did the experiences in that first one, did you change some things in the 2 subsequent years?
I'm always changing things up. I think I never like to stagnate. I think particularly in any endurance sport, you're always improving, and there's always little things you can do to change. So I certainly reassessed after every race there, and after every season I've had in my career, I sit down at the end and do a little debrief with myself. And analyse things honestly, I don't give myself lip service. I look at things I think I did well and things I didn't do well, things maybe I could do differently, and certainly that was the case after each of the races I've had in Kona. I mean, I changed, obviously that first year in '07 was my first time there, and doing the race and then sitting down afterwards, there were things I realised I'd done wrong in training and other things that I thought I'd done well, but I didn't overhaul the whole program, but I made some changes in terms of the training, the volume of the training, the intensity, scheduling the season leading up to that race, because that race falls fairly late in our season. So as you'd know, the timing of these things and periodising the training and scheduling the events is very important. So you're in peak fitness in October for us. So there were little changes I made. As I said, I didn't really overhaul the whole thing, but I think it was important to try and learn from the things that I hadn't done well and really reinforce to myself the things that I had done well. But no major changes really.